Life often feels like a waiting game filled with uncertainties, delays, and moments of frustration. You pray, you work hard, you put in the effort, yet nothing seems to move forward. It feels like every door you knock on remains shut, every opportunity you reach for slips away, and every breakthrough you expect is delayed. In these moments, it's easy to feel like God has forgotten you or that your prayers are unheard. But what if I told you that the delay is not a denial? What if I told you that God's timing is never off, never late, and never wrong? Divine timing is always perfect, even when it feels like nothing is happening. There's an unseen process at work, a process that is shaping you, preparing you, and positioning you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. When God is about to step in and make a way for you, He does so at the moment when everything is aligned according to His perfect plan. Your job is not to rush the process or try to force things to happen, but to trust that He knows exactly when and how to bring your breakthrough. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had dreams of greatness, dreams that God Himself placed in his heart. But before those dreams could become a reality, Joseph had to go through years of hardship. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. From the outside looking in, it seemed like Joseph's life was moving further away from his destiny. But in reality, God was positioning him for something greater. Every setback was a setup for his ultimate breakthrough. When the right time came, in a single moment, Joseph was elevated from the prison to the palace, fulfilling the purpose God had for him all along. The same is true for you. You may feel stuck in a season of waiting, wondering why things aren't happening the way you expected, but just because you don't see movement doesn't mean that God isn't working. Behind the scenes, He is orchestrating events, aligning opportunities, and preparing you for the moment when He will step in and open the right doors. What may seem like a delay is actually divine preparation. There's a reason why God doesn't always answer prayers immediately. Sometimes we're not ready for the blessing we're asking for. If He gave it to us too soon, we might mishandle it, undervalue it, or even lose it. Other times, He is protecting us from something we can't see. What looks like rejection could actually be God's redirection. What feels like a closed door could be Him saving you from something that would have harmed you in the long run. Think about the times in your life when you wanted something so badly, only to realize later that not getting it was the best thing that could have happened. Maybe it was a relationship that didn't work out, a job opportunity that fell through, or a situation that seemed perfect at the time, but later revealed itself to be completely wrong for you. God sees what we cannot see, and He knows what we do not know. His timing isn't just about when you're ready, it's also about when everything around you is ready. If you're feeling discouraged, if you're wondering why things are taking so long, I want you to remember this. When it's time, nothing can stop what God has for you. When God steps in, things that seemed impossible suddenly become possible. Doors that were shut for years will open effortlessly. What seemed like a hopeless situation will turn around in ways you never expected. Moses and the Israelites experienced this firsthand. They were trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea with no way out. In the natural, it looked like their story was over. But in the supernatural, God had already planned their escape. At just the right moment, He parted the waters, making a way where there was no way. The same God who did that is the same God who is watching over you. If He could do it for them, He can do it for you. Waiting on God's timing requires faith. It requires patience. It requires trust. It means believing that even in the silence, He is working. Even in the waiting, He is moving. And even when you don't understand, He is leading you exactly where you need to be. Don't let delays make you doubt God's promises. Don't let obstacles make you question His power. What He has for you is already written, already planned, and already set in motion. The moment He steps in, everything will change. The breakthrough you've been waiting for, the opportunity you've been praying for, the blessing you've been expecting, it's coming, and it's coming at the exact time that God has ordained. Trust Him, keep believing, keep walking in faith, because when it's time, nothing and no one will be able to stop what He is about to do in your life. There are moments in life when every path seems blocked, every door seems closed, and every effort feels like it's going nowhere. You've tried everything, you've prayed, you've worked hard, you've waited patiently, and still nothing seems to shift. In these moments, it's easy to feel forgotten, overlooked, or even abandoned. But here's the truth. Just because you can't see the way doesn't mean just because you don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't working behind the scenes. God is the master of making a way where there is none. He is the one who takes impossibilities and turns them into realities. But here's something important to remember. Before He opens the way, before He moves the obstacles, before He changes your situation, He often works on something even more important: your heart, your faith, your character. Because the way isn't just about getting you to the next level, it's about preparing you for what's to come. Sometimes the reason God doesn't immediately open the way is because He is strengthening you in the process. He knows that if He removes every obstacle too soon, if He makes the path too easy, you might not develop the endurance, the resilience, and the faith that you will need for what's ahead. He is not just answering your prayers, He is shaping you to carry the blessing He has prepared for you. Think about the story of the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. God had promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, a place of abundance, peace, and rest. But before they could enter that land, they had to go through a season of testing, a season of waiting, a season of learning to trust Him completely. When they faced the Red Sea with the enemy behind them, they panicked. They saw no way out. But what they didn't realize was that God had already planned their deliverance. At just the right moment, He parted the sea, making a way where there was none. The same God who parted the Red Sea is the same God who is working in your life right now. You may not see how, you may not understand when, but know this: He has not forgotten you, and He will not fail you. One of the biggest mistakes we make when we don't see the way is trying to create our own. We try to force things to happen in our own strength. We take matters into our own hands, and we end up walking through doors that God never intended for us. And when we do that, we often find ourselves in situations that drain us, break us, and leave us more frustrated than before. That's why it's so important to trust God's process, even when it doesn't make sense. Look at Abraham. God promised him that he would be the father of many nations, but as the years passed and nothing happened, he and his wife Sarah grew impatient. Instead of waiting for God's way, they tried to make it happen themselves. The result? More struggle, more delay, and more pain. But when God's time finally came, the promise was fulfilled in a way that no human effort could have made possible. Waiting is never easy. It challenges our faith. It tests our patience. It forces us to trust in ways we never imagined. But in the waiting, God is working. He is removing the things that don't belong in your future. He is aligning the right people, the right opportunities, the right timing, and when the way finally opens, you will see that it was worth every moment of the wait. There are moments in life when it feels like no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you just keep running into walls. You pray, you work, you wait, but the breakthrough doesn't come. The opportunities you thought would open don't. The people you counted on disappear, and the path forward seems more unclear than ever. In these moments, it's easy to feel discouraged, to wonder if you're forgotten, to question whether you're even on the right path at all. But what if I told you that just because you can't see the way doesn't mean the way isn't being made? What if I told you that God's silence isn't his absence? What if I told you that sometimes the delay is because God is preparing something bigger than you ever imagined? God's ways are higher than our ways. His timing is not like ours. We live in a world that tells us everything should happen quickly, fast results, instant gratification, immediate answers. But God doesn't work on human schedules. He works according to divine purpose. And sometimes that means He has to prepare things behind the scenes before revealing them to you. Think about a builder constructing a house. Before the walls go up, before the windows are placed, before the final touches make it look like a home, there's a foundation that must be laid. And that foundation isn't something people see or admire, but it is the most important part of the structure. Without it, the house wouldn't stand. In the same way, God is building a foundation in your life. He is strengthening your character, developing your faith, shaping your heart, because what He has for you isn't just about getting you to the next level, it's about sustaining you once you get there. One of the hardest things to accept is that God's timing doesn't always match our expectations. We want things to happen now, but God sees the full picture. He knows that if He gives you something too soon, it might not be a blessing, it could be a burden. If you step into an opportunity before you're ready, you might not be able to handle it. If you rush into a relationship without healing, you might repeat the same mistakes. If you walk through a door before God has prepared the way, you might find yourself struggling instead of thriving. Waiting is not easy. It tests your patience. It challenges your faith. It forces you to trust in ways you never expected. But waiting is never wasted. God doesn't just make you wait for no reason. He makes you wait because He is preparing something greater than you could have ever planned for yourself. Think about Joseph in the Bible. God gave him a dream as a young man that he would be in a position of great leadership, but instead of stepping into that promise immediately, he was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. It seemed like everything was going wrong, but what Joseph didn't realize was that every setback was actually a setup. God was preparing him for the moment when he would step into his destiny. And when that moment finally came, when God opened the way, it happened suddenly. One day Joseph was in a prison cell, and the next he was standing in the palace, second in command over all of Egypt. That's how God moves. It may seem like nothing is happening, but when the time is right, He will step in and everything will change in an instant. The challenge for us is to trust Him in the process, to keep believing even when we don't see progress, to stay faithful even when the doors remain closed. Because faith isn't about seeing, it's about trusting. It's about knowing that even in the silence, God is still working. Even in the delay, He is still preparing. Even in the struggle, He is still shaping you for what's ahead. Sometimes the reason God hasn't opened the way yet is because He is protecting you. Maybe the opportunity you're asking for isn't the right one. Maybe the relationship you want so badly isn't part of His plan for your future. Maybe the delay is actually God's way of redirecting you to something better. Think about a parent teaching their child how to walk. When the child stumbles, the parent doesn't always rush to pick them up immediately. Sometimes they let them find their balance, strengthen their legs, learn how to stand on their own, not because they don't love them, but because they know that the child needs to develop strength for what's ahead. That's what God is doing with you. He's letting you go through the process, not because He's abandoned you, but because He's strengthening you for what's to come. And when the time is right, when you are ready, when the pieces have fallen into place, God will open the way. And when He does, It will be better, greater, and more powerful than anything you could have ever imagined. So, don't lose heart. Don't let frustration steal your faith. Don't let the waiting make you give up. Because when God steps in, everything will change, and it will all make sense in His perfect time. There are moments in life when you reach a breaking point, when everything you've worked for seems to be falling apart and the weight of your struggles feels unbearable. It's in those moments of despair that you begin to wonder if God is even listening, if He sees your pain, if He cares about your struggles. You pray, but the answers don't come. You cry out, but the situation doesn't change. You do everything in your power, yet the breakthrough feels further away than ever. But what if I told you that just because you don't see the way doesn't mean God isn't making one? What if I told you that the delay, the struggle, the confusion, it's all part of His divine plan to position you exactly where you need to be? God is never late. He is never caught off guard. He is never surprised by your circumstances. What may feel like a setback to you is often a setup for something greater. Sometimes God allows things to fall apart so that He can rebuild them better. Sometimes He removes people from your life not because you did something wrong, but because they can't go where He's taking you. Sometimes He closes doors not to punish you, but to protect you from what's on the other side. When you're in a season of waiting, a season of struggle, it's easy to become discouraged. It's easy to feel like giving up, to settle for less, to start doubting God's promises. But faith is about trusting God even when you can't see the full picture. It's about believing that He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything for your good, even when it doesn't feel like it. Think about the Israelites when they were trapped at the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army was behind them, the sea was in front of them, and there was no possible way out. They were terrified, they doubted, they questioned, but what they didn't realize was that God had already made a way. He just hadn't revealed it yet. And in an instant, the impossible happened. The waters parted, and they walked through on dry ground. The very thing that seemed like their greatest obstacle became the path to their deliverance. That's how God moves. When you feel trapped, when you don't see a way forward, remember that God sees what you can't. He knows what's on the other side. He knows the blessings, the opportunities, the relationships that are waiting for you. And if He is asking you to wait, it's because He is preparing something far greater than you can imagine. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to force open doors that God has intentionally closed. They chase after relationships that God has already removed. They try to revive opportunities that were never meant to be theirs. They hold on to things that God is asking them to release. But when you trust God, truly trust Him, you understand that what He takes away is just as important as what He gives. Every closed door, every delay, every disappointment, it's all part of His divine strategy to get you to where you are meant to be. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't about God changing your situation, it's about Him changing you. It's about developing patience, building endurance, strengthening your faith, because when you reach the place He has prepared for you, you need to be ready to handle it. What good is a blessing if you're not prepared to receive it? What good is a promotion if you don't have the character to sustain it? What good is a relationship if you're not healed from your past? God knows the exact moment when to step in. He knows when to release the blessing, when to open the door, when to make a way, and when He does, it will be undeniable. It will be something that no man can take credit for, something that will leave you in awe of His power